So just started out by digging through the pile and finding all the pieces that I needed. These were all made out of walnut, various types, Claro walnut, black walnut. There's a lot of sapwood in some of these. And really the challenge was just finding pieces that I could use that didn't have big cracks and things like that throughout. Once I had the pieces that I needed, brought them all over to the workbench and just traced them out using a prototype that I had originally made for our good friend. She had confirmed that it is what she wanted. I just had to make a few changes to the design. So basically I just used that as a tracing guide. Once I had all the pieces rough traced, I just brought them over to the miter saw and cut off all the excess. So once I had them all cut down, I brought them to the bandsaw and started cutting out the rough circular shape that I had traced earlier. And that would be the mess I created. So this next step was a bit of a project within a project. I don't have a compass, so I am using a bevel gauge here to act as a compass to give me a circular shape. I'm making a grinding wheel so that I can grind off all of the rough edges on these pieces. I'm not entirely convinced that this was a necessary step, but I wanted to get as close to circular as I could because these were already kind of in a regular shape, and they're going on the lathe after this, and I didn't want them to be super unbalanced and wobbling around a bunch. So it may not have been necessary, but I went for it anyway just because I wanted to make it easier on myself. So basically what I'm doing here is just tracing out, I believe it was a 9-inch circle on both a chunk of plywood and on a 180 grit sheet of sandpaper. So I trace it out with that bevel gauge acting as a compass, and then I bring it over to the bandsaw again and trimmed it down to a circular shape. After that, I had to drill a 1/2-inch hole in both the plywood and the sheet to fit on the arbor on the grinder. And here I'm gluing the sheet to the plywood using some CA glue and some accelerator, which actually worked pretty well. I was surprised. I thought maybe that this was going to peel off or come apart at some point, but this stayed on the whole time. It was pretty impressive. Very nice. Great success, Betty. So you can see here I'm just kind of whacking off the rough edges, the edges and the faces here, trying to get it to as close to circular as I can without screwing up the imperfect feel of each piece. Once I had them smoothed out, I'm just marking the relative center on each one with my makeshift compass / bevel gauge. Once I had the relative center marked out on both sides, I slapped one on the lathe and I started kind of experimenting with how I wanted these to be shaped. I was shooting for like a really shallow shape where it's going to have a lip on the bottom, or I guess a rim on the bottom, so that it will sit evenly on a table when you set it down. But I don't want them to be very thick overall. Like I want them to be kind of plate-like at the end of the day. So this is what I ended up with. This is the first one, and it's still pretty rough. I'm also terrible on a lathe, so make fun of me if you must, but this is new territory for me. Once I figured out the design that I wanted to go with, I just started repeating this with every piece. Again, there's 20 of them, so I had a lot to do. So as I keep going, I start getting better, and the shape becomes a little more refined, and I can see here I even start sanding on one side, and they get a little prettier each time. So that was a bit of a confidence boost. After all the lathe work was done, I brought the stack over back to the bench, and this is a very janky setup. I realize that, but I don't have any hold downs for something like this. I still need to make my woodworking bench, and that will be another video down the road. But as of right now, I'm just using my vise with a clamp in it. It was a little unstable at times, but it did what I needed it to do. Once I knew that my setup was going to work, I just drew a rough line around the top of each one of these pieces. Just kind of eyeballed it. It didn't need to be perfect, but then I just took a round nose bit on my router and just ran it around the line that I had just drawn to create sort of a shallow curved lip. Just enough so that crackers and things like that won't slide off when it's in your hand. Then I just moved on to a flat bit and flattened the surface on each side. Then I did have to clean up some of the rough excess with some carving tools. But after all of this, I was able to achieve the look that I was going for, so it worked out. And then I just repeated the process 19 times. After that, I moved on to shaping. I'm using my spoke shave here, donated by my father-in-law. Shout out to Jim. Thank you, Jim. And then lots and lots of sanding by hand, and also using my orbital sander. I spared you the hours that it took to sand all 20 of these, so here's just a quick clip of that. And then finally, for finishing, I just soaked each one of these for about 10 minutes in mineral oil just to get it soaked through. This is my little assembly line here. You can see I'm cleaning one up as I have one soaking, and I just kind of swap them out as I go. So after the mineral oil bath, I take them back over to the bench and give them 3 coats of butcher block conditioner, which works really well to give them a seal and give them more of a dry finish. If you only use mineral oil, they have kind of a weepy finish that comes off really easily, so this helps kind of seal it all in. And I really like the feel at the end. They kind of feel a little silky. So this is where I will leave you. This is the end result, and I really like how they turned out. You can see all of the different grain patterns I'm surprised this is all from Walnut, or maybe it's not. I mean, I could be wrong. This is just in a pile of reclaimed wood that I had, so maybe tell me in the comments if some of those look a little different to you. So until next time, thanks for watching. I appreciate you as always, and I will talk to you soon. Make some cool stuff.